Okay, great. So thanks everyone for coming this evening to our presentation. My name is Dr. Amber Benton. I am the Assistant Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the College of Natural Science. So I will be hosting all of us this late afternoon, and this is on behalf of our office, the NatSci Center for Inclusion, NatSci Center for Community Inclusion of Belonging. And we want to thank you for being here tonight. A couple of housekeeping things. I just want to remind you all, we are in a Zoom meeting, so we do ask that you stay muted so that we don't pick up your background noise. It is a quite large audience we're expecting. I also want to let you know that we are recording this because there are a couple of other presentations going on in the college this afternoon in departments, and we want to make sure that people have access to the information after this meeting. So once the video is finalized, we'll be sure to send that out to all of you so you can share with colleagues who may not have been able to attend live here today. You will also notice that the chat is disabled. You can submit chats to the host this evening, which is myself, but we are going to ask you to hold any questions you have until after Dr. Bennett's presentation. So you'll be able to submit them through there. But if you have a technical issue or a concern, you are welcome to send a chat. And it will just go to the host. So with that, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Bennett. And so I just wanted to give everyone a bit of context about his background before we turn it over to him. So without further ado, Dr. Bennett serves as Michigan State University's Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer, where he reports directly to the president and is a member of the executive leadership team. In this role, he partners with other senior leaders, deans, faculty, staff, students, and alumni to advance the institution's diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic priorities. Dr. Bennett is also a professor of medicine in the College of Human Medicine at MSU. Prior to joining MSU, Dr. Bennett served as the inaugural Associate Provost for Diversity and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer at Northwestern University. Previously, he worked as Associate Dean of the Graduate School and Associate Dean for Diversity in the Division of Biology and Medicine at Brown University. In addition, Dr. Bennett held administrative appointments at Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and United Way of Massachusetts Bay and Merrimack Valley. He has also served on the faculty at Harvard, Brown, and Northwestern. Dr. Bennett received a Bachelor of Science in Biology and minor in Spanish from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University and earned a PhD in Biomedical Sciences from Meharry Medical College. Dr. Bennett completed postdoctoral research training in the Department of Pathology at Harvard Medical School and is an alumnus of the Harvard University Administrative Fellows Program and Massachusetts Education Policy Fellowship Program. So we are very grateful to have Dr. Bennett here with us this afternoon. And so I think my part, you've heard enough from me. I am now going to spotlight Dr. Bennett and turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Amber, for the introduction, and thank you all for being here today, and to Kendra for inviting me. I'm going to share a bit of information and talk about the work that my office does at MSU related to advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and then specifically share information about some of our strategic priorities. So I hope there'll be some time at the end, a few minutes that maybe we can take some questions and answers, as I want to be sure that we're all clear on where we are, but also where we're headed and what everyone can do to help advance this very important work here at MSU. So the two things we're going to do, I'm going to talk about our historical approach to advancing DEI. You'll often hear me talk about DEI, but I also want to emphasize that DEI stands for diversity, equity, inclusion. And those three things are all three different things that we talk about collectively. So I'll be talking about our commitment to this work, and also sort of this shift toward this intentional space and a series of actions that we take that really amount to inclusive excellence, and then talk about our trajectory and the work that we hope to move forward as it has emerged from some from various strategic planning discussions and activities over the past now nearly 2 years. So a bit about our approach to this work. Some of you may or may not know that Michigan State has centralized support around diversity, equity, and inclusion, but truly with a focus on compliance for quite some time. So we've been doing this for over 50 years, and the work has been organized in different ways and reported through different areas that you'll see listed here, and currently organized under the Office for Inclusion and Intercultural Initiatives as 2007. So our work initially focused on helping to ensure that we're mitigating and addressing issues of potential bias in employment. And you can see that we've worked to help support individuals who identify in different ways based on some federally mandated protected classes at the top, but also against some additional protected classes as identified by the state of Michigan. So this has been, and this was really the early part of our work. The focus really laid there. We still do have a keen compliance function here at the institution. In my office, the Office for Inclusion and Intercultural Initiatives, we oversee the Equal Employment Opportunity Program, the Affirmative Action Program, Plan and Development, the VETS 4212 report that's required to be submitted related to federal contracting. And we also have a role in the executive and faculty hiring processes, where we monitor many steps along the way, and we advise committees on hiring as it relates to what we can and can't do as outlined in Proposal 2 or Prop 2, which amended essentially the state of Michigan's constitution, in that we can't use race as a single factor, the factor in thinking about recruiting and employment. We monitor and process lots of, again, EEO, AAP related work. We review and approve interview lists and search plans for, again, faculty and executive searches. And we liaise with individuals who are in your college, faculty excellence advocates, but also assistant and associate deans for diversity as it relates to the search process, from the beginning to the time faculty land on campus and all the things that we can do to help support the success of members of underrepresented groups and others. And we retain records. One thing we're working on now that I'm excited about is an institution-wide supplier diversity program, work that is being led by IPF with colleagues from across the institution that include myself, to really think about who we do business with, how we decide and make decisions around contracts, who are some of our larger contractors subcontracting with. We also want to know about the composition of employees within the organizations that we're working with, and also their contributions to local communities. So this process is coming together, and excited to work with some of our major units on campus to help get this important work done. So let me talk about our commitment to inclusive excellence. I've mentioned, and I will come back to several of the things that have emerged you've been hearing about over the many months related to work that's happening that has emerged from our strategic planning processes. And while our mission has not changed, what we have done clearly is articulated what our values are through the institutional strategic process. Values around collaboration, equity, excellence, integrity, and respect. And you can find all of this on the MSU's website. And I'm happy that these values have been clearly articulated and agreed upon, because it's these values that we will hold each employee, including me, accountable for as we move forward and thinking about future performance review processes, to really talk about how we are just, I would say, demonstrating behaviors that are consistent with these values. What are we doing to help advance collaboration, to ensure equity, to drive excellence, to show the integrity that we have and hold ourselves and others accountable, but also how are we respecting the differences that we all have and the multiple dimensions of our identities that we bring into the space, whether it's in the classroom, the practice field, the athletic field, or in an office or laboratory research setting. There is a vision for diversity, equity, inclusion at MSU, and that's that we become a national leader in this space. And I've heard people talk about this who participated in our strategic planning activities over the past several months, really a year and a half or so, that we want to be a leader in advancing our mission, but doing it with the most diverse and exemplary cadre of students, trainees, and employees. And I included the word cadre here because it really speaks to a group of people who understand what our mission is, where we're trying to go, and are more clear about what their role is, what our individual roles are in helping to move this very important work forward. I hope, and what we hope as an institution and the work that my office is doing is to help achieve some major goals. To think about how we can recruit, train, and hire this diverse and exemplary cadre of folks that I just mentioned, how we can better support the retention, safety, well-being, and promote the success of Spartans who are members of underrepresented groups and others, what we can do to enhance the overall living, learning, and working experience for all of us who are part of this community, and what are the things that we can do intentionally to bolster outreach and engagement and economic development. So we have a bit of a guide or recommendations on how to move all this forward that emerged in the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Steering Committee task force and the report and plan they developed. And I'll talk a bit about that. I referenced this next slide to say that for the goals that I just talked about, and you'll see some objectives I did not mention, understanding that these goals were not identified arbitrarily, but they relate to who we are as an institution, to many of the existing resources that we've had in place that support some of our hiring activities and help to sort of guide us around our retention efforts. But we also have these new plans that have been developed that help to support and bolster this work even more. The Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Steering Committee report and plan, the institutional strategic plan, the task force on racial equity, and I'll mention the relationship violence and sexual misconduct plan as well as being one of the major ones, but you'll see other things here as well. So if you haven't had an opportunity to go through all of these plans, especially the newly emerged ones and released ones, that's fine. I'm going to give you some highlights, and then we'll have a chance, I hope, at the end to talk about what you can do and how you can partner with me and others to help advance this work. So if we can recruit, train, and hire the most diverse and exemplary cadre of students and trainees and support the retention, safety, well-being, and success of all Spartans while enhancing the overall learning, living, and working environment, then along with bolstering our outreach, engagement, and economic development efforts, then we'll be engaged in this active practice that's intentional I talked about before, really striving for and achieving inclusive excellence, which really means just being intentional about the broad diversity, equity, and inclusion related issues, individuals, and priorities that we have in place here at the university. Just want to be intentional about this work because that's the only way that it's going to get done and hopefully be sustained over time. I show this slide because for many of you, it's the first time we've had a chance to interact. And while I am not the first person who has served in a Chief Diversity Officer role at MSU, I am the first person who has had the Vice President title associated with it. And I want to be sure that we're clear on how I view and approach this work. So if you look at the top of this diagram here, you'll see social identity characteristics. When I talk about diversity, I not only want to talk about the identities that we are used to hearing more commonly related to race and ethnicity, gender, age, sexual orientation, disability, religion, and so forth. But I also want to talk about socioeconomic status. I want to talk about our colleagues, our students who are genderqueer, non-binary, transgender. And what I also want us to think about, though, and realize is that none of us are just any one of these things. We hold multiple identities. So as an institution, it's important that we realize and talk more about and provide more support for all of us at these intersections. And thinking about this idea of intersectionality is really key. The work that I do touches activities related to recruitment, retention, climate, curricula, research, so forth. The list goes on. All of these are keenly important for a Chief Diversity Officer and for an institution that is serious about this work. And I believe MSU is very serious about the work that we aim to do moving forward. And as you might imagine, every day I have the opportunity to interact with faculty, students, staff, trustees, alumni, and others, which is a wonderful opportunity for everyone to understand what their role is in helping to get this work done and advance in the way that we imagine. So I talked a lot about our work and the original focus being on compliance, but it has expanded over time to really focus on these 4 major areas, which align with recommendations from the recently released DEI Steering Committee report and plan. So the work that we focus on now will continue to in the future. And now again, we have a guide map with the DEI report and plan. These areas are around increasing diversity, ensuring equity, promoting inclusion, and enhancing outreach and engagement. For those who don't know, I have several staff in my office, including myself. There are 11 of us. A couple positions are new, but even with this structure, just to be clear that for a campus with nearly 50,000 students and over 12,000 plus employees, it takes a lot to get the work done that we imagine we might. And to that, I will say that President's family has made a commitment to help expand support and capacity in my office, amongst my team, and amongst the resources we have access to get this work done. So you may know some of the folks here who do a lot of heavy lifting, although you may be surprised at how small the team is and the staff that work across various areas. We are organized in my office around activities such as generating an annual diversity inclusion report, which is currently more focused on compositional diversity. We are working this year to expand that to include the wonderful work that we do and units like yours to advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and also to highlight the work we do in outreach and engagement. We do offer a certain number of awards and various types of programming each year, as well as a small amount of grant funding for different reasons. And the work is organized in the space of compliance, the Diversity Research Network, which I'll talk a bit more about, education and development, as well as outreach and engagement. So some of you have participated in the programs or celebrations you'll see below, and maybe even been recipients of the Excellence in Diversity Awards. But these are programs that have been around for quite some time at MSU. Some of these programs have been around so long that they sat in other places before my office took them on. But we are responsible for the annual Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta commemorative celebration, as well as the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day commemorative celebration and the activities that happened during that time of the year. This year, we had and hosted and organized the first institution-wide Juneteenth celebration on Saturday, June 19th. That will be an event moving forward. And we always like to welcome our new faculty and staff each year. And generally when we're in person, this is again, a face-to-face event. Our education team is small but mighty, but does quite a bit of work, offering programming such as the newly launched Anti-Racist Path Dialogue series, the DEI Foundation's online educational module that you all participated in last year for the first time if you were an existing employee. But for those who joined since the past year, you were required or have been required to do that upon entry. I want to take a minute to say something about DEI Foundations to be clear. This was a first effort that we launched last year with not a lot of time to turn it around and utilize an external vendor to utilize a product that they had developed to use for members here in our community. We realized that it is an imperfect product and we've made some modifications along the way. And for, again, those first year students and new employees who've joined us this fall, they are participating in this module, but we are currently working with colleagues and students on campus to develop our own module that will have the type of content, the type of language and terminology, and cover the topics that are meaningful and relevant to our campus community. So I'm happy that Patty Stewart and her team are spearheading that particular effort. We also offer an implicit bias certificate program for those of you who are interested, as well as the MSU Dialogues, which really provides you an opportunity individually or each of us personally to really explore our own identities and what they mean in spaces like those at MSU, sometimes predominantly white and majority, or predominantly heterosexual, or predominantly populated by people who have Christian-based faith religious practices. But that's not who all of us are as Spartans. And MSU Dialogues really helps us take a critical look at ourselves, as well as other issues of privilege and ways that we can just work better and communicate better together. The Transforming Theater Ensemble does a wonderful job of using theater and actors and acting to really explore difficult topics that are that are often difficult to discuss, that are challenging in nature. But we've done this through theater and continue to do that. And we offer a limited amount of consultative services and facilitator training as it relates to some of these topics, but also inclusive teaching methods and methodology. The education team, just to let you know what they've done the past year, the people that we touch in our Anti-Racist Path Dialogue series, we saw over 300 folks with many collaborators with well over 30 contact hours in a 20-week period. The DEI Foundation's online educational module, again, offered it for the first time last year. These data are as of summer 21, so they are better than this, but we had nearly 100% compliance with employees and much greater than 90% compliance with students. And again, this is an expectation that this work will continue and that Spartans will be required to participate. Our implicit bias certificate program saw over 500 participants last year in multiple cohorts. And again, we collaborated with many units to offer this as well. And using the train the trainer model, we are able to offer these services to more folks than my current staff has the capacity to do. And with dialogues over time, as this model requires a certain number of individuals who have certain identities, we have seen over 450 participants on various cohorts related to race, religion, and other key topics. I'll speak for a minute about the research grants that we offer, and then a bit about the DRN, or the Diversity Research Network. So many of you are aware of or recipients of the Creating Inclusive Excellence Grants, or CIEG program, which really helps units like yours, colleges, to do good work that you imagine that is suited for your community. Whether it's a curricular innovation, it's a conference, it's an activity to bring a speaker in, it's a collaboration with another unit, we offer funding to allow you to do that work internally. This year's grantees were just awarded and will be announced very soon publicly. But I'm happy that we've had this mechanism in place for the past several years to, again, build capacity, enable this work to be done in units where my office doesn't necessarily have the space, the time, the staff, the capacity to move it along on our own. So I appreciate your partnership, and for those of you who apply for these grants every year. The DRN, a Diversity Research Network, does a wonderful job to support diverse scholars and those who engage in diversity-related work by creating community, elevating scholarship, providing support in some ways through small funding. And you can see the many things that DRN engages in. One of the things I think you'll see on this list too, the Launch Awards program, which can provide a modest amount of support for faculty who engage in research-related activities. I won't go through all the activities that you see here, but just to give you an idea about what this team does of essentially a 75% full member and then a couple of part-time folks. We are building capacity in this space as well, I'm happy to say, but the work that our team continues to do through the Diversity Research Network has been beneficial to many. Many faculty who come here who are new, or many faculty who find themselves to be the only ones in their areas that share identity, or who may even focus on work related to diversity. So the network, again, does a wonderful job to support our faculty and their research in our community in various ways. And these are just some highlights about the folks that we serve annually, and in some cases over time. So just to give you an idea about the work that we're doing through the DRN. So I work with, and my office works with everybody imaginable on campus and off. And one of the things I'm excited about as it relates to the direction we're headed, to not only focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, but also outreach and engagement, is thinking about how to connect more intentionally, but also in the beginning, thinking about a mutually beneficial partnership between external organizations and individuals, whether it is a tribe that is located in the state, or a school or school system, where we can help support teachers in their professional development and students in their readiness to apply for, be admitted to and matriculate at MSU. We work with everyone, and as time goes on and as we prioritize our next steps and actions we'll take, as it relates to our work being driven by some strategic planning. I'm just excited about meeting people and engaging in ways, again, that I think that are authentic and are going to be helpful to people outside of MSU. So let me get into what our priorities are and some of the work that's been done and the result of that work over the past year and a half. So some of you may have seen this particular image before, depending on what presentations and spaces you've been in, but I want to be sure that I mention that the work that we are doing now and the work I'll be reporting on at this next slide and beyond really has been catalyzed since President Stanley arrived back in August of 2019. He saw a need for the institution to undergo a strategic planning process to really help determine our priorities over the next decade, but also knew that we needed to really focus on diversity, equity, inclusion as a key priority as well. The Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Steering Committee was charged in August of 2019 and convened for the first time in January 2020. What happened a few months later in May 2020 was, and this was an event that happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but was really critical to work and thinking about how to impact change and culture and ensure safety on our campus too. It was the murder of George Floyd. And at that time back in May, and based on the response that we heard about in Minneapolis, on our own campus and across the nation, President Stanley knew that we needed to think about some things that we could do more immediately to help address the concerns that our campus had related specifically to racial equity. So the Task Force on Racial Equity was formed as a subcommittee of the DEI Steering Committee, but this group also invited experts who were topical experts and others from campus to participate. And they developed more immediate actions that we've begun to address already. And I'll talk about that. And then the Relationship Violence and Sexual Misconduct Expert Advisory Committee was convened at the same time and also delivered a strategic plan with some priorities that I will mention too. So across these plans, just so you know, the reports came out 1 month after the other, I believe. The Task Force on Racial Equity report came out back in March of this year, and there were 3 working groups that made recommendations across 3 key areas: campus, climate and safety, faculty and staff diversity, and policing. And then in April, a month later, the Relationship Violence and Sexual Misconduct Strategic Plan, or RVSM Strategic Plan, was revealed. And there were several key initiatives that were highlighted in this work around expanding trauma-informed services, building trauma-informed culture, strengthening our policy, violation, sanctions, and discipline processes related to RVSM, assessing existing resources and supports for respondents, strengthening prevention programming, creating a respectful work environment, of course, with all the work that we do, promoting accountability. The DEI Steering Committee report and plan released this past summer had 4 major themes, and these themes, again, have really helped us to identify the focus of our work moving forward around increasing diversity, ensuring equity, promoting inclusion, enhancing outreach and engagement. And finally, the institution strategic plan released this past summer had several major themes, and some of you here I know maybe were involved in all of these processes in some way, but the strategic plan for the institution really identified student success as a priority, along with staff and faculty success, innovation for global impact, sustainable health, stewardship and sustainability, and DEI. What I'm so pleased about regarding the institution strategic plan, which is also part of President Stanley's charge, is that while DEI, or diversity, equity, inclusion, emerged as a single theme, it is being considered across every other theme listed, from student success to stewardship and sustainability. So if you haven't had an opportunity to read the plan, and I can't say I expect that you read every page of it, if you go through, you will see where there is reference to and an expectation around how DEI will be considered in all the work that we do. So I'll talk a little bit about the Task Force on Racial Equity and then go into the DEI report and plan, and then have a dialogue with you all. So the Task Force on Racial Equity, again, appointed back in the summer of 2020 as a result of George Floyd's murder. We have the Campus Climate and Safety Committee chaired by Jung-Ling Han, the faculty and staff diversity group chaired by Quentin Tyler, and the policing group chaired by Jennifer Kobina. It's really important to highlight and call out the folks who did this work. And I'll pause here and say that for the four major plans I've talked about, the institutional strategic plan, the DEI reporting plan, the task force on racial equity, and also the RBSM plan, these were developed by members of our community, students, faculty, and staff. Some professional or graduate students who are undergrad alumni, and some faculty and staff who are alumni as well. And I say that to underscore that the information shared and recommendations made came from a very informed place, based on experience, based on what we know and observe needs to be. There were all types of data analyzed from existing surveys, qualitative data were considered as well. But I want to let you know that these are all plans and recommendations made birthed from our community and not top down from President Stanley, myself, or the Board of Trustees. So I'm really proud of that work. And you'll see Dr. Benton, of course, was involved in the Task Force on Racial Equity, as well as the DEI reporting plan. So what did the Campus Climate and Safety Work Group use as a guiding principle? That's just that things that we do now alone will not remove systemic barriers to effectively advancing this work. So there were recommendations made that you can read about using the link below around building trust, enhancing communication, addressing issues around incident awareness, and supporting diversity, equity, inclusion broadly. The faculty and staff diversity working group said that attracting and retaining and supporting faculty and staff who are reflective of and responsive to our students is really important and will help support their success as well as employee satisfaction. So several recommendations were made around expanding our hiring efforts and looking at longer range issues such as data and how do we think about data, how do we capture it, are we capturing the right thing? Also, how are we sharing data and encouraging leaders to use data to make informed decisions to drive a lot of the work that we do. And finally, the policing working group understood that a safe, welcoming, respectful campus climate will help enhance recruitment retention of diverse faculty and staff and ensure our safety, but also that a respectful and accountable police department is a necessary component of a healthy campus climate. So you'll see these four main areas of recommendations that were made, and I'm so pleased to say that, again, this report came out in March of 2021. Marlon Lynch arrived on April 1st as our Vice President and Chief of Police, and since that time, he's already taken action to address several components of these recommendations related to the inclusion of anti-bias unit, looking at budget and services, oversight and accountability, as well as thinking about issues that are really important around safety and service. And you've been hearing a lot about that lately through some university-wide communications. So what's happening next with this work? We're spending time this semester and into the spring to continue to prioritize the recommendations, but also coordinate the implementation of these recommendations along with those that are coming out of the DEI reporting plan and those recommendations that are relevant and related to DEI out of the RBSM plan as well. So there's always a lot going on, lots of challenges. Oh, and we are coordinating with the institutional strategic plan and those recommendations too. So there's always enough to do as it relates to getting this done, but we need to take the time necessary to have it done well, which is what we're focusing on right now. So along with prioritizing recommendations, we do have some metrics in place that were proposed at the time these recommendations came forward, but we're continuing to review those to think of additional ones that should be in place as we work toward implementation and execution, and also establishing accountability. And there will be accountability for all this work. I'm going to take a little more time to talk about the DEI report and plan. I can go through it with you, but again, I will leave time for us if there are some questions here at the end. For those of you who hadn't seen the plan, this is the cover of the book. Well, I call it a book. It's a small book. It's a little over 40 pages, maybe 42 or so. But actually, that's not true. I think it's over 70 pages. It's around page 42 where you can get to the bulk of the plan and the recommendations. But I encourage you to take a look. But it's important that you see this quote that I'm going to read to you that President Stanley stated that is placed in this plan. And that is that a culture embracing diversity, equity, inclusion is essential for all that Michigan State University wants to accomplish. And a comprehensive planning process around those values will work in collaboration with the strategic planning process while elevating the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion as a foundation for all MSU does. I am proud that this statement was made and is part of this work, and also really happy that we were successful in integrating the very important work of diversity, equity, inclusion into the institution strategic planning process. This committee, again, charged back in December 2019, but convened in January 2020, was asked to do several things. And some of the key questions at the bottom that the president wanted the group to really address were how we define, again, separately, diversity, equity, inclusion. What would it take to become a national leader? This is our aspiration, in this space. How do we integrate DEI into the larger strategic plan, which I think we've been successful there? And how do we align our valuable resources with our priorities? And this is the part that's going to take more time as we continue to prioritize recommendations and not making cost a factor in the prioritization and the consideration, I would say, but being aware. And all that means for me as we think about cost and the availability of resources is there's some things we'll be able to do now that we deem really important, but there's some things we'll have to push out a little further as those resources become available. We had colleagues from Migrant Student Services and the College of Human Medicine who led this work for over a year and a half, working with our colleagues, with 26 faculty, staff, students, and some alumni who were part of that, and then a group of advisors who consulted along the way. This committee broke up into 8 different work groups, hosted more than 50 listening sessions with over 400 people, and generated more than 200 recommendations. You will not see 200 recommendations in the DEI report and plan that I just showed you the cover of, but we do hope to make these full reports available from each of the work groups soon so that you can see everything that was mentioned in that process. Again, I want to highlight all the people who participated in this work along the way, a very long process. You'll see some names that you know, but another plan that came from members of our community who know this space and who have really spoken and contributed based on experience and what they know the needs are. So what do we come out here with as far as our strategic areas of focus? So I talked about before, increasing diversity, ensuring equity, promoting inclusion, enhancing outreach and engagement. And here you'll just see examples of what we mean when we talk about equity in retention and protection of individuals around promotion and opportunities to be promoted, and how do we help support that, and recognition for work done and contributions made. When we talk about inclusion, one of the ways to gauge this will be a forthcoming climate survey, a single survey, which is my aspiration, that all students and employees will participate in to give us a baseline understanding of what the individual Spartan experience is, which will really help us identify trends as well as if there are particular issues that are impacting members of certain populations. In enhancing outreach and engagement, we want to figure out how to work different and better with members of the Michigan community, alumni, donors, suppliers as well. And we think about diversity, people matter, right? That type of compositional diversity matters, but we also are thinking about other areas as it relates to our curricula, the research, topics and questions that we ask, and how we conduct that work as well. So to go through a few of these, when we talk about increasing diversity, there are recommendations around data collection, addressing graduation opportunity gaps, looking at the student body related to its composition, but also staff diversity initiatives and thinking about broad success. For faculty, academic and staff and administrative diversity, there's also a specific recommendation around how to ensure greater variation there. For faculty and academic staff success, how are we supporting the success of those of us who work in units like your college, and for faculty who teach in these spaces? How can we support curricular transformation and diversity-related research topics and scholarship? These are all priorities. What will happen beginning in the spring is some more in-depth conversations with leaders and others around how do we get there? And again, in what rank order should we be thinking about these issues? I imagine there'll be some centrally funded work that'll happen that I and others will coordinate, but there also will be opportunities for units to request support or funding to move things along at the local level, to think about in your own ways, what can you do to increase diversity? In your own ways, in your own college, how can you think about helping to promote inclusion and ensure equity, but also bolster your efforts around outreach and engagement? So there will be flexibility. When we talk about equity, what are the policies and practices in place across various areas to ensure that everyone is being treated fairly, has access to the same resources or the type that they need to be successful? And I'll just give you an example of, again, one thing that is moving forward and being done, the University Religious Observance Policy. We've had colleagues working in the past several weeks related to this policy and what it means for our teachers, our faculty, our instructors. What does it mean for our students? And we're currently working with the Senate, the Faculty Senate, to really review this policy and its implications so that we can work more toward communication, socializing, and implementing this sooner than later. Around inclusion, I talked about climate surveys, one of the best ways to gauge where people are and how they feel and how we can support their success. And we also are thinking about our physical environment and thinking about the spaces that represent or reflect the diversity of individuality and culture and community, and also thinking about DEI education related activities and metrics that should be required for all Spartans. Also regarding promoting inclusion, we want to think about how we're communicating, the type of things we're saying, the content, the style, is it appropriate? Is it addressing members of our broad community? And other issues, and again, this issue of policing that I mentioned before. We are concerned about issues of accessibility of all types, physically, virtually, and also thinking about the various types of support services needed to make our students feel included, to feel like they belong, but also to help them be successful. Outreach and engagement, I'm excited about working and learning more about MSU Extension and our colleagues who work in every county across the state. And also, again, thinking about the various populations, historically underrepresented populations and communities, tribal communities across the state that I want to ensure we're engaging with in the best way that is helpful and supportive to them as well. And I've talked about alumni relations, donor development, and vendors as well. So none of this work will get done without your help. None of this work will get done without deans, associate deans, directors, and every person who's on this call today understanding what it is that you are expected to do. The president and I will be sharing annual updates with the board on progress made to advance these recommendations. We'll be asking units to provide reports on these efforts as well. And I also do not believe in holding people accountable without helping them be successful and equipping them to do so. So there will be an opportunity for unit leaders, for your dean, to make a request during the annual budget process to say, in order to move the work forward that I see for my college related to diversity, equity, inclusion, outreach, and engagement, I'm going to need a little additional support. And in ways that we can be helpful, we're going to do that. And again, each of us has a role that will be held accountable for, I mentioned before, at the time of the annual performance review, and others where appropriate. So we're along the same timeline with this work as I talked about with the Task Force on Racial Equity, spending this fall and the spring to have some conversations to continue to prioritize recommendations, as well as explore metrics and systems for accountability. And before I stop, I want to share one more thing with you that was not part of this major presidential initiative because this launched early this year, but it's very important. Melissa Wu and I had the opportunity to serve as co-executive sponsors for the short-term work group of name and pronoun usage. And what we asked our colleagues to do who responded to the call, so you'll see the co-chairs here who led this effort, but we said, Melissa and I, we're going to give you 90 days to really think about how we can better acknowledge and provide opportunities for people to share their names and their pronouns, and how this information can be captured consistently across various university systems. The objectives that we set for this group were, again, to identify and potentially connect systems which capture this information, provide options within each system to input and access self-reported data related to honorifics, gender identity, sexual identity and orientation or pronouns, and also think about some policies that we should have in place and how we can educate and raise awareness amongst our Spartan community members around why this is important and what role we all have to play. So there are 3 documents that we created. You'll see at the bottom that Melissa and I are reviewing and will be communicating around next steps, but just pleased that we've done this work. My office continues to work on bolstering infrastructure, enhancing our own marketing communication. I don't know if any of you knew exactly who we were as an office, who we are as an office, and where we're going, which is why I'm glad I had a chance to share those slides at the beginning. But we want to increase outreach and engagement efforts, as again, it's not an area that we have focused on, but it's a space that many units are working in on campus. We want to align with and advance various institutional priorities. I listed those before. And as we think about implementation, these are all the things that we're keeping in mind as well. So I want to stop there. There are about 10 minutes left for any questions that come through. If you don't have time to ask your question today, you can reach out to me one-on-one, send me an email, I'll respond. We can find a time to talk, or I'm happy to come back to any smaller unit or a group to discuss as well that may be part of this larger gathering today. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dr. Bennett. If you have a question you want to ask, feel free to add it to the chat. I do have 2 initial questions. One is, are you willing to share the slides you used today so people can go back and reference?
Absolutely.
Great. And then I'm actually going to turn over to Kendra to ask our questions.
If anyone has questions, you can put them into the chat, and I'm going to allow so that you can send it to, should be able to send it to everyone now.
There's one question that was asked earlier about the grant. Not sure if you saw that, Kendra, but the question was basically asking, there's much work to be done, but has the CIEG budget increased over time, and what level are we now?
So great question. So the CIEG budget has increased over time. It did not in this past year, this current budget year that we're in. However, what I can say is the budget this year, I think, was somewhere around $600,000 or so. And we received about over 60 proposals. Not all of those were funded. And the reasons being they did not align with the priorities of the funding mechanism. Or they were incomplete proposals that we received. And there are many things in some instances, and I do utilize the review committee to advise on the decisions for that funding. There were also some other issues or concerns around work that units could be doing or should be doing without the help potentially of those awards. So we do reserve that right. But I do appreciate you all asking that question, and it is an important mechanism that we'll maintain. But the CIEG grants, as you know, have over time helped lots of units and individuals to launch work, to start work, to sustain efforts. So that will remain available to members of the community.
We have another question in the chat. For those of us who are working on DEI initiatives in our units, how can we learn about what other initiatives are going on in other units that could also benefit our own?
So that's a great question. I'll say that there are several groups that are pre-existing that I know some of the people on the call here who are part of, DEI practitioners, professionals who sit in different spaces, some in academic units, some also administrative units. I have been hesitant to and have yet to create yet another group, but I do think there will be value in considering something like what I'll just call now a unity council that convenes on some basis to really help connect all the people who are doing this work. So there are student-based groups, there are faculty and staff-based groups, there are strictly administrative staff-based groups as well. So that's one thing. The other thing is my office does have a newsletter that we put out every couple of months. We have thousands of people on the listserv, but it is a self-select type process. We don't automatically send this out to everyone. But in that newsletter, we provide updates about things that are happening on campus within our office, and also share announcements about things that we do receive. So you can surely find out through our newsletter, and even on our website, we do post some things, and we also have a social media presence. But I would say subscribing to the newsletter would be a good first step.
Another question regarding gender identity, is MSU thinking of forcing everyone to make a trinary choice?
So we would never force anyone to do anything, but what we will do is make more options available in different places in order for people to self-identify in the ways that make sense for them. We will definitely do that, but it will never be a forced choice. I also believe there will always be a no response or choose not to reply unknown, and that again is an individual decision. But what I can say about data in general, even as relates to sexual orientation or identity, gender identity, race, ethnicity, those data are really helpful for us to have. It's not all required to be reported federally, but it does give us an idea about who our community members are. It can really help inform some of the programming that we might put in place or funding that we make available, a resource to help support members of various communities. So it is always a individual decision to self-report those data, but they really do help to support and inform our work.
And as far as subscribing to the newsletter, is there a link on the Office of Inclusion website for that?
There is, and if I don't have time at the end here, just to put it in the chat, we can find that and ensure that you get it. And you should be able to see the most recent one, which came out last month as well, back in October. So yes, on the website.
And Dr. Benton has posted how to subscribe to the newsletter into the chat for us.
And those of you who are thinking of questions, please ask. I'm harmless. And if you don't have a question today, as I said, you can always email me. I read and respond to my email. I try to get back to folks at least within 48 hours. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I also will say this as people are thinking about questions. The work that I do and the work that my team does is very important work, and we do take it seriously. I often advise individuals who are dealing with difficult, situations within their work environment, who need to have someone listen to them and or provide advice on how to have a conversation with a colleague, with a supervisor. If you find yourself in that situation where you're not being supported or feel like you're being mistreated, or just need a little, help figuring out how to go to the next step, feel free to reach out. I am available for that. The Diversity Research Network and Deborah Johnson and her team are available. So just know that we are here to help. We truly are.
Are there any other questions?
And if there aren't any, I'll just say you're welcome to the folks who've commented in the chat. But I also will just say thank you for the opportunity to come and speak here. I've actually been telling people, invite me to come to your unit, invite me to come to your office or center, because I think that's the best way to get clarity on what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go. This isn't rocket science. In a way, but there is an art and science to this. Let me say that to this work. There really is. But I want to be as transparent as I can and also be as clear as I can about the things that you can do to help. and what it means when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and why it's important at MSU. So I really do appreciate the opportunity to come and share some time with you today.
Thanks, Dr. Bennett. I would also, I think, and I might be speaking out of turn here, but we're working on our college strategic plan. So I think it would be great to also have your eyes and maybe a discussion so you could see where we are also trying to go as a college in terms of our DEI strategic priorities as well. And so thank you very much for your insights today. And for those of us who did not hear me at the beginning, this is being recorded. And so we will package this and get it all captioned and all that great stuff. And we will share it out with everyone so it will be accessible. Our goal is to have it on the NatSci YouTube page for you to be able to view. And so stay tuned for that. But just like Dr. Bennett also, since you're here, shameless plug, I also would like to see our units as well. So you've got a very committed DEI group on campus who is really supportive of this. I want to thank everyone in NatSci who came out today. And we are officially at time. And so I am going to stop us our recording. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their evening.